All right, everybody, strap yourselves in. We're diving deep into a case that just never gets old. Jack the Ripper. And let me tell you, we're not messing around today.
No, we are not.
We're talking original newspaper clippings, eyewitness accounts straight from 1888 London, even police reports from the time. It's going to be like stepping right into a time machine.
What really makes this case so fascinating is that it goes way beyond just, a series of horrible murders. Jack the Ripper, whoever he was, became this symbol. He embodied all the anxieties of Victorian London, everything from like the poverty to the fog, that fear just lurking around every corner.
Okay, yeah, paint that picture for us. It's 1888, we're in London's East End. What's the feeling there? What's it like?
Okay, picture this. Close your eyes. Cobblestone streets, narrow, winding. The only light you got is this, like, flickering gaslight, barely cutting through the fog.
Oh, I bet the fog was awful.
Awful. Yeah, it's like a thick blanket, makes it feel like nighttime in the middle of the day. And this is the East End. Poverty isn't just some idea in a book, It's everywhere. Life, there was. Well, it was cheap. Especially for women.
Especially women on their own right, trying to survive.
Exactly. Living on the edge, really.
Yeah.
And that brings us to these murders.
These are not your run-of-the-mill crimes, are they?
Not at all.
Yeah.
These women, they were working, if you can call it that, in Whitechapel, and they were brutally murdered. The first, Mary Ann Nichols, found on August 31st, 1888. Her throat was slashed, horrible wounds, and her abdomen, it was mutilated.
Oh, God.
And it wasn't just a one-time thing. A week later, almost to the day, they found Annie Chapman's, the same line of work, similar injuries, just as awful.
So this wasn't just about killing. It was about sending a message, wasn't it? And the sources, they go into some really unsettling detail about these murders. The precision, almost like it was surgical. The way certain organs were removed.
Yep.
Did any of that match up with what doctors knew back then?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's part of what makes this whole thing so creepy. See, the sources, especially the reports from the medical examiners, they suggest that whoever did this, they knew something about anatomy. Like Catherine Eddowes, one of the victims, her kidney and uterus were removed.
Oh, my God.
Right. That's not just some random act. You got to know what you're doing. Naturally, people started saying maybe it was a doctor, a butcher, someone who'd be around, bodies. But we also have to remember that the newspapers at the time, they weren't exactly shy about exaggerating.
Sensationalizing it all.
Exactly. So it's hard to know what's really true sometimes.
Right. And then, as if these murders weren't scary enough on their own, the police start getting those letters.
Oh, yeah.
The Dear Box letter, the From Hell letter. It's chilling. Did people actually think those were from Jack the Ripper back then?
Oh, completely. Especially that Dear Boss letter. It was like he was, speaking directly to them, to the whole city, the way it was written, bragging about the murders, promising more to come. It was terrifying. It created this connection between the killer and everyone else, like he was right there with them.
Living in their heads, rent-free.
Exactly. Most experts nowadays think those letters were fakes, probably written by journalists trying to, sell more papers. But at the time, they completely changed how people saw the case.
Just added to the panic. So you've got the police desperately trying to solve these crimes, and the newspapers going wild with it. Were there any actual suspects? Did they ever even come close to catching him?
That's the thing. Despite all the theories, all the names thrown around, they never caught Jack the Ripper. And that, that's part of what's kept this whole thing so interesting for all these years. Was it a surgeon, like some people thought? Some crazed butcher? Or maybe just someone who knew how to disappear into the fog and the shadows? Really have no idea.
It's almost like it becomes this blank space where we can project all our fears, our morbid curiosity,
Exactly. And because we don't have a real ending, it keeps us guessing. But I think it's important to remember, even though he was never caught, this whole thing, it changed things.
How so?
The police, the way they investigated crimes, it was never the same. They had to up their game because of Jack. Fingerprints, crime scene investigation, all of that, it got better, more advanced, and it shone a light on just how vulnerable women were back then, especially in places like Whitechapel.
So it's a horrifying story, but it led to some real changes.
Exactly. The Ripper case, it's a reminder. Sometimes the questions that haunt us are more important than the answers we may never find.
Well said. It makes you think about the darkness that can hide right beneath the surface, anywhere, anytime. And it reminds us that some mysteries might just stay mysteries forever.
That's the thing about history. Sometimes it's the unsolved cases that stay with us the longest.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.